The proposal review page is one of the busiest pages within BidUnity, and I want to try to make it clear what's happening here. So based on your company settings, okay, your vendors are specified here. Product multipliers for the vendors are controlled here. Your company's margin schedule doesn't apply. Your company's settings, which control the default way that labor is calculated, can be set through here. We have options. No constraints are applied by default. The section modulus looks to find the theoretical maximum size any component can be. That's based on the component's properties. And it also looks at the design pressures associated with each of the elevations. Florida product approval based constraints are going to look at the maximum size tested for each of the components. Labor can be determined based on the square footage of the elevation. It could also be determined based on its relationship to parts. For example, for masking tape, you might allow 1 second per foot. The Rebuild All Data button will allow the entire set of options to be rebuilt. So a new takeoff. All of the selections that you might have made will be reset to 0. The Choose Components modal is going to display all of the potential component options for any given system. You can change the selected components there. If you enable the constraints, then some of those components might be disqualified from the system. Within each of the line item expenses, BidUnity reports the required parts, so perimeter sealant, sausages. We can zoom in on this and see more specifically if we want, a different type of construction sealant. By default, BidUnity is going to select the lowest possible cost for every single item. That goes for all of the systems. If we cancel, that's going to take us back to the proposal page. We could also review a parts tree. So many people are going to be wondering, are the requirements based on the correct sizes? Well, you can investigate that further by looking at the parts list. You can also look at the parts list when the proposal is finalized. Look at the cutting instructions. You might notice from time to time the rebuild data will be highlighted with a red indicator. When that happens, it indicates that you've canceled out of this and changed something, maybe changed the size of an elevation or changed one of the elements of the specification. Finally, we can look at the labor rates. We can, again, build up a labor duration based on association with parts. Our total labor is summarized in this line, and our subtotal is the total of labor and material. I want to bring your attention to the typical system cost. This is just a square foot number, a general square foot number that is associated with the system type. I use it as a loose guide for determining if I'm in the ballpark or not, especially when I don't have a whole lot of comparable systems. Within this context, you can look at all of these systems and see a number of different values. So we have 2 that are close to $2,000, 2 that are close to $1,700. If we only had one system, the typical cost would be much more useful. If you have multiple different specifications, then you'll have a table which summarizes the costs of each of those specifications. our frequently asked questions, explain a little bit more about some of the things that can go wrong, which we might as well get into that. Um, there are a lot of opportunities for the part sizes to not get built correctly. Um, if, for example, in the elevation, one of the problems I have, I will put in the number of inches in the feet column, and instead of making an elevation 120 inches tall, I'll make it 120 feet tall. That can create some problems with respect to finding parts that fulfill the requirements of the elevation. Stock lengths are generally only available in limited sizes. Um, when we're missing parts here, we're going to have a red item. The value will be shown in red, and that'll indicate that you would want to look at adding a company vendor, or maybe adding the part into the database, or adding pricing for it, potentially changing the finish that the specification is looking for. Um, you also might get an error that you're missing components. Okay, so this list contains a fairly complete set of everything. Um, if we enable the Florida product approval, we might be able to disqualify some of the items. So now it's going to rebuild everything based on applying constraints. Systems were not very large. We still have all of the available components in that context. Get a little bit more time, I'll change this out, give us something to better explore that with. Now, when we initially review the proposal, BidUnity is going to find the previously stored information. Now we're going to rebuild it, and it should be applying those constraint options. We can double check they are selected. Okay, and we notice a number of these systems are missing components. So we can zero in on the components. Okay, we don't have glass tested at a large enough size for this particular system. In this particular system, again, we're missing glass. Glass again. So in that way, you can reference back to what the potential source of the error might be. I hope that this is helpful in supporting your use of the different options.